Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is my first video to go over the review for the test. I've heard that these have been pretty popular in other classes and they've been successful, so I thought I would make one for you. Told people in class that I'd try to add some entertainment, make them a little more entertaining, because I know just sitting here listening to my voice droning on and on and on could get a little bit boring. So I'm working in some music, I'm going to throw in some jokes, maybe some videos, I don't know, we'll see. I'll do my best, but you guys know teachers are the most boring people in the history of the world, so yeah, I'll see what I can do. Alright, the first thing we want to focus on, of course, is we just want to go through this in the order we learned it. So let's go back to what we first learned and get some lessons from that. I'm talking about money, so let's go ahead and take a look at the money PowerPoint. Okay, of course, we don't need to focus on necessarily this whole thing. Alright, you took down like 8 slides or something like that of information. We don't need to go over all that. Okay, but certainly you probably don't want to know what personal finance is, so take a look at that. What is money? Do you think I need to know all these historical forms of money? Probably not. Not all that relevant. Don't worry about it. What do we use for money? That's obviously pretty important, but that's also obviously really easy for you to know. If you don't know that, you're in trouble. Okay, so know these 4 forms of money. Know the differences between them. I feel like you probably know that pretty well. Also, of course, know credit cards aren't money. Okay? At least not in my class. I don't count them as money. Know why credit cards aren't money. So take the time to put that in there as well. And to know that. Now we get down to some of the stuff that kids find a little bit harder. There are 5 characteristics that money must possess in order for it to work, in order for it to function properly. You should probably want to know those. They're listed right there. Okay? And then the purpose of money, and this is probably the most difficult one, alright? Take some time and know the difference between money being a medium of exchange, which means it helps us make transactions, money being a unit of account, which means that it lets us know the value of certain items, and money being a store of value, which is to say that it holds value over a long period of time. When you think of this, think of a savings account. We can put money in a savings account and spend it 20 years from now, and we get roughly the same amount of stuff. That goes along with the trading activity, okay? Know what the purpose of the trading activity was. And the purpose of the trading activity, if you remember this, we had the 100 pounds of food. We ran around the classroom like crazy making trades. The purpose was to show us how it's easier to have money to make exchanges rather than trading food, to have money to assign a value, the value of something, rather than guessing at the value of tomatoes versus potatoes or steak versus chicken or whatever, and also to have money to hold value over a long period of time, because we know food doesn't hold value over a long period of time. So that was the purpose of that activity, so you want to definitely know that. Alright, along with money we had our first worksheet. Okay, so go back and take a look at that, see how you did. If you got a 15 out of 15, you probably just glance at it, make sure, review it real quick. If you got a 10 out of 15 or worse, you might want to figure out what you did wrong and why, and that's when you can come to me and ask me some questions about it. This part most kids did pretty well on, just analyzing if a gold brick is easy to understand its value, widely accepted, so on and so forth. Down here, these questions were a little bit tougher, and that goes back to the medium of exchange, unit of account, store of value. So if you did not do well, where's that on this part? Come ask me about it. Okay, now that I bored you with 3 minutes of mine talking, it's time for a quick break, okay, because I know you guys have the attention span of, like a moth or something like that. So what's more funny than getting on YouTube and watching some adorable animals? So this might be illegal, by the way, but surprise kitten! Isn't that cute? Okay, you should all be laughing or just rolling your eyes and saying Mr. Lestinsky has completely lost it. But that's fine. Okay, whatever. Alright, enough of that. Okay, now we're moving on to the second part of our studying. And this is the bulk, the biggest part, the part that you need to know the most about credit cards and debit cards. Okay? You've got to know, especially credit cards, inside and out. Alright? So take a lot of time and make sure you really understand the benefits and drawbacks of, in particular, credit cards and debit cards. The #1 way to do this is to go over, like I mentioned, your credit card web quest. Okay? 25 questions. Let me pull this up. It might take a second. because my internet's going really slow. But this Investopedia website is a great resource for studying. Now, it's a ton of information, so you kind of need to sift through it and pick out the most important stuff. And I'll tell you that focus on these 25 questions. But as you see, I have some of them highlighted, and it's taken forever to open up, as I expected. But some of these I highlighted, and I'm not saying that the only the ones I highlighted are important, but those are some ones you're definitely going to want to know. You're going to want to know the convenience that credit cards provide. That would be kind of like an advantage. You want to look at what the definition of a credit card is. Hey, that's important too. How would you define revolving credit? Revolving credit's one of your vocab words, so definitely know that. Okay? Credit rating. Alright? Who actually gives you a loan? All of these are important. So go back through these. Alright? Make sure that you have the right answer. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these and give you the answer to all of these, but make sure you have the right answer on your web quest. If you don't, ask someone or ask me. Get on my big campus and shoot me a question. Hey, what was the answer to this question? Go ahead and, oh, hey, internet started working. How about that? It's actually, I want to go back to the document though. Okay. But anyway, ask me, ask a fellow student, whomever. Get on my big campus and ask a question. I'll get on there and I'll answer it. But find out the answer to these questions, because they will end up on the test. I'll tell you, this is a good chunk of the test, so be ready for it. Okay? And go through all the questions. Make sure you get through all 25. If you for some reason didn't turn this in, don't have it, I recommend finding a copy, printing off a copy off of my big campus, and getting some answers down, because without knowing this, you're not going to do very well on the test. I almost guarantee it. By the way, I'll go ahead and tell you right now that I know for a fact all this stuff is posted on my big campus, so if you need a copy of any of this, anything you see in this video, any homework assignment, any PowerPoint, they should all be on my big campus. If not, they will be very, very soon. Just bring it to my attention and I'll put them up there. Okay, so that's the big chunk of information we need to know about credit cards. Alright, let's go to looking at the difference between, well, actually, let's go here. Okay, and computers, right? So, okay, there we go. How much does debt cost? This one is particularly important for understanding the concept of the minimum payment. Alright, you really need to know and understand how that works, how minimum payment works. So go back to this chart excuse me, and look what happens when they make minimum payments. Alright, how long does it take them to pay it off, and how much interest do they pay versus other methods. And then from that, you should be able to draw some conclusions about how minimum payments work. Hopefully you remember what I've said about them, is that basically they're not all that good. Okay, it's not the best method for paying off a bill, so keep that in mind. Okay, once again, I've rattled off for long enough now, and I'm sure you're starting to doze off again and fall into a deep slumber. So something entertaining, something to get you back into it. Alright, so once again, cute animals always does a trick. Let's look at the shock kitty. Yes. Anyone else find it a little ironic that we are watching YouTube on YouTube? It's crazy, but watch the cat. He's shocked about this as well. Now come on, I don't care who you are. That's pretty funny and adorable. Could watch that all day. Alright, let's move on. So, let's go to the document I want right here. Okay? Credit cards versus debit cards. Great article. A lot of great information here. This is probably, after the credit card web quest, the second most important article that we talked about, that we covered. Okay, we didn't talk a ton about this actually, but you guys did really well in the homework, so I know that you got the basic concept, and part of that is because this assignment is pretty much idiot proof. It tells you right in it, hey, benefits of debit cards, right down here. Drawbacks of debit cards, okay, down here. Benefits of credit cards, drawbacks of credit cards, and below each of those sections, they proceed to tell you what the benefits and drawbacks are. So it spells it out as easy as it can. Alright, so you should understand the basics. The only thing is, in these paragraphs, if there's something you don't understand, let me know. If there's something, once you read it, you still didn't understand it, let me know. That's completely acceptable. Okay, but to understand what this article is trying to tell you should be very, very simple. Each section, if there's one particular part you don't understand, that's where you can come to me and ask for some clarification. But definitely go through this. Definitely know the difference between credit cards and debit cards, okay? And know the benefits and the drawbacks of each, because that's going to be huge, okay? very, very important to know the difference between those two. Alright, let's go back to our study guide and let's look at what we've covered so far. So, advantages, disadvantages of credit cards, we covered that. Okay, advantages and disadvantages of debit cards, we've covered that. Alright, differences between the two, obviously. Okay, credit rating, what's based on? That's in the web quest. Minimum payment, that right in there. The investigative web quest, we talked about that. Alright, this one right down here, we haven't talked about this yet, but how to analyze the terms and conditions of a credit card and determine if it's a good deal. That was our credit card research project where we went into the websites and looked up the information. You just need to know what's good and bad about a credit card. That you should have found that in the web quest is all. I don't want to go over that in all that much detail. Okay, so we've knocked out the money section. We already talked about that. We've knocked out the credit card and debit card section.